Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. A little bit of housekeeping. The Maimer of Mocher Chodesh, we will do at a later date, as Hashem. The Rebbe edited the Maimer. It's one of the last Maimerim that the Rebbe edited. And we will learn it from the edited version, B'lineda. We will learn a historic Maimer tonight on the 40th anniversary of the Maimer, almost the 40th anniversary. And I vividly remember this Farbrengen, and tonight is the birthday and the yahrzeit of the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mitteler Rebbe. It's called the Mitteler Rebbe because many people experienced the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe, and then his son, Rabbi Dovber, and the third Rebbe, who was the son-in-law of Rabbi Dovber and the grandson of Rabbi Shneur Zalman. And the Mitteler Rebbe was known for his prolific chassidus, which we'll talk about in a moment. But the 9th of Kislev is his birthday and yahrzeit. The 10th of Kislev is the day of his geula, of his redemption, which happened really twice in his life. The year before he passed away and the year before that, when he was released twice from arrest, house arrest and prison, on the 10th of Kislev. And he was really exonerated posthumously, interestingly enough, on the 11th of Kislev, a day later. But he had just passed away 2 days earlier, when by the time they had the final appeals, etc., and that's all recorded elsewhere, which we won't get into right now. Nevertheless, it was said by the Rebbe convened the Farbrengen on the night of between the 9th and 10th of Kislev, which was also a Monday night like it is now, but 40 years ago, now everything changed a little bit by the date because there was 2 days of Rosh Chodesh Kislev this year, and 40 years ago it was only 1 day. And that's the calendar works a little bit differently from now. It will be always a day off. And this year we'll have Erev Pesach on Shabbos, which that year the first day of Pesach was Shabbos. But there's not to make too much out of this point, not to belabor it. So the Rebbe was Farbrengen and talking about the Mitteler Rebbe and about his chassidus, etc. And it was said that if somebody would cut, the Mitteler Rebbe would have a cut, instead of blood coming out, chassidus would come out. That's how prolific he was. He also wrote very prolifically. And the Rebbe spoke then in that Farbrengen about the fact that the Mitteler Rebbe wanted chassidus to be available for people to study. So he gave out his writings to be copied. He also wanted it printed. And he also wanted it printed in a way that it should be affordable, so that they could print. A book is made of little books that are sewn together, so they would get it maybe one little booklet, a boigin it's called, at a time, and they would be able then to learn that and afford that, and then buy the next one, and piecemeal, so to speak, and then later on they would have a complete book. The Rebbe said that he really wanted that they should start printing the Torah of the Mitteler Rebbe. Now, the Mitteler Rebbe in his lifetime actually published certain Sforim. Famous amongst them is the Imre Bina, and he also has the Teres Chaim. There are different. Teres Chaim was printed a little bit later, but there were several of the books, the Pirush HaMilas, different Sforim that he made while he was alive. Now, in his lifetime, so to speak. Now, there were still many, many writings left of the Mitteler Rebbe. So, we're talking 40 years ago, 1985. The Rebbe said that he really wanted this project to already take off, but it hadn't happened yet. But in honor of this anniversary of the redemption of the Mitteler Rebbe, so the Rebbe spoke about that they would print for that day Maimer of the Mitteler Rebbe, and that would jumpstart the project, so to speak. and they would sell it, and I can't remember now if it was sold then for a nickel or for a quarter. It was either 5 cents or 25 cents, and this moment I don't remember. But it was sold the next day, and people learned it. The Rebbe said at the Farbrengen that he wants it learned on that day, and they actually published it twice on that day, and the Rebbe actually did a few notes on the first version. So I have now later on that the Rebbe said they would start from Vayikra, and that was the series of Mamori Ad Murham Tzoi, the discourses of the Mitteler Rebbe, which came out for them over the next 10-15 years, or even more, of all his works published in order. So, but the first one was done, and this I'm just showing you this, the Sefer here, but it came out then, of course, in a pamphlet, which starts with Toides Admor Shlita. The Rebbe gave a note then that says that this shows that this was then given out while he was alive, like we mentioned, like he had mentioned in the Farbrengen. And the Rebbe said he's going to now say a piece of this mimer, which is what, after the Rebbe spoke a lot about the Mitteler Rebbe just in general, and then about his Torah and about publishing his Torah. After that Sikha, if you look into the Farbrengen, then the Rebbe said the mimer, Kein Sikha, the Rebbe said that mimer as the end of his talk, which is what we're going to learn tonight. And then you could also study, we could learn subsequently how the Mitteler Rebbe said it, with other details. But we will learn the mimer. So, it's in Titus Menachem here, page 753 for those following, and you could see it on your screen. And he begins with the verse in the beginning of Leviticus, Adam ki Yakreev became Korban lavai mina behema mina boker mina tzayin. A person amongst you, and this is a very famous beginning of a discourse, and we've already discussed it last year too. So when a person offers up from amongst you an offering to God from the animals, from the cattle, and from the sheep, and the one who had the redemption, the Bal HaGeula, the Mitteler Rebbe, explains in his mimer, which is being printed and published right now, the Rebbe said, it says in Psalms that Adam, the human being, ubehema, the animal, Teshia Hashem, God saves. Sheyesh b'Yisrael beis b'chines. Every Israelite has these two parts, these two aspects, Zera Adam v'Zera behema. The seed, the offspring of that's like the person, and that which is of the animal. This is what it's referring to when a person has to offer up. Mina behema, bechina zera adam v'zera behema. So when the verse says adam ki Yakreev, a person who will offer, that means he has to offer up the human part. And when it says mina behema, from the animal, then he's offering up the animal part. The Mavaya Sham, the Mitteler Rebbe explains, the Bechin is that Adam was that Behema Adam, Hem Nefesh Keys, Nefesh Bahamas. This refers to, within the person, the godly soul and the animal soul. V'zehu Adam ki Yakreev, Goymer Mina Behema. This is what the verse means when it says a person who offers from the animal, Pidish Adam hu nefesh shalikis. So Adam, when it says a person, that's a reference to the godly soul. Yakreev Korban min ruach habehema, the nefesh habahamis. He brings an offering from the spirit of the animal, which is the animal soul. Kihine nefesh shalikis b'china zera Adam ksiv ba. Ruach ha'adam ha'oila hu l'mayla. This idea of the spirit, we were referring to the godly soul as the part which is called Adam, the human being. It's really, of course, a piece of God, but God is also called the supernal being, the supernal Adam. So the spirit of man, which goes up, which is over, which is supernal, which is higher. Hainu Shekol Yisro Umayanahu Binyoni Ateiru Mitzvah. Its primary occupation is the Torah and the mitzvahs, the supernal things. Mashenkin and Nefesh Bahamis Ksibo. But regarding the animal soul, it is written in Ecclesiastes, Ruach HaBehema Hi'era L'Slamata. The spirit of the animal which goes down. What does that mean? Pirush. Kemuva Behem Shchamaymer, like the Mitteler Rebbe says in the Maimer. Sheyesh Lo Retzonis V'Tayv Shalamata. The animal has wills, the will and lusts that are from the lower realm. Retzonis V'Tayv Gashmi. Wills, things that it wants, and lusts, things that it yearns for and wants, that are very physical, and all types of pleasures, etc. Materialistic. This is what it means when a person will offer up from the animals. The human part elevates the animal part. Be'efen the korban, in a way of an offering. Lashon kiruv, the word korban, which we're translating here offering, which many times is translated as sacrifice, but it really comes from the term lashon kiruv, to bring closer, to offer. Ukepashtasin a korban shemivin min behema, just like the offering that was actually brought in the holy temple, that is brought from the animal, bakodesh al ham in the holy part of the temple, al mizbeach, on the altar, and then it would get consumed completely. And like it says, especially in the Kabbalistic works like the Zohar, the mystery of the Korban, the secret of the Korban is, this offering, is that it really goes up to the highest realm of the infiniteness of God. Even though it seems like something which is so, it's an animal being offered, something so physical, but it's really one of the most spiritual services. And the offering, when the animal is brought up, it also elevates the person who brings it. The offerings are helpful for the person themselves who brings it, not only helpful, in other words, it does something very special for the person who brings it. Like Nachmanides says, when a person offers an offering, person has to contemplate, think about this, and say and feel. Really, truthfully, it would really be befitting that the one who's offering the offering should be the one who's being burnt on the altar. But by the grace of God, the kindness of God upon him, upon the one who's offering it, God switched it. And switched that his own flesh and blood and his own fat being diminished by burning is exchanged his physical body not being burned, but it's exchanged for offering the fat and the blood of the animal. And we could connect this in a general idea with the discourses of our Rabbi, including the Mamorim of the Baal HaGeula, the one who was redeemed on the 10th of Kislev, meaning the Mitteler Rebbe, that were said in conjunction and connection with the days of redemption. That many of those Mamorim start with the verse Hamaschilim bepasuk Pada b'shalom nafshi mikrav li. My soul was redeemed in peace from battle for me. What is the idea of a battle, a war, physically, in the world? In the simplest way, this is what the verse means. really, when there's a war, it really comes through, it mirrors how it is the battle that a person has to experience. What's the inner war within the person? The war of the godly soul with the animal soul. What are they fighting about? What's the war? That the person, the idea of Adam, meaning with the godly soul, should affect the aspect of the animal soul, that it changes from its makeup. In other words, it shouldn't be something which is promoting to do things not as it should be, but to take the physical and use it, promote it for holy purpose, and not for unholy things and various lusts, etc., that it may want to do. So that's a battle. This war takes a battle. What does a battle mean? Like the old battles, it's not like today where you're firing off missiles and God should save us all from these things in Eretz Yisrael, etc. But it was hand-to-hand combat in those days with swords, etc. They were close by. So that's why the word for battle in the Holy Tongue is krav. Like we say today, popularly say krav maga, right? The martial arts are called, using this term. But it means because you're very close to the person, up and close. So a battle, means you're very close. But that could also mean to affect in a great way. So we have to then bring closer the animal soul, transforming it into using it for the right purpose. That's why the verse ends, because many were with me. The purpose is to elevate the multitudes, the many. What is that referring to? The spirit of the animal. That's what the verse is saying, that my soul is redeemed in peace. The redemption, the victory, mikrav, from the battle, that also elevates the person who elevated the animal soul, also is elevated on his own. Now the verse that King David says in chapter 55 in the Psalms is that the redemption was specifically in peace. It wasn't just with a war, in a messy way, but it was done peacefully. What does that mean in what we have to do in our service to God? So that war that primarily is waged between the godly soul and the animal soul, that's primarily done at the time of prayer, during davening. Why? Well, let's start with the tefillah. The prayers were instituted instead of the offerings. After the temple was destroyed, it says in Shalma Purim, we pay, so to speak, for the bulls that would be offered with our lips, with what we speak, with what we talk, the prayers. So the prayers were instituted instead of the animal offerings. So then the battle then comes to there. And this redemption in peace means that this war comes together and based on Torah study, which is also not necessarily a battle, but it takes work. The Torah because Torah was given to make peace in the world, and that's the Rambam. The Rambam says that as a ruling in the end of the laws of Hanukkah, especially when it speaks about the idea of if somebody only can afford Shabbos candles or Hanukkah candles, he says you have to the Shabbos candles take precedent because that's to make peace, and the whole Torah was given for making peace. Torah is for peace. So so what does that mean here? Even in a place where one would think that it necessitates to have, it's necessary to have a battle and a war, the Torah can bring peace to there. And in Torah itself, this is particularly accomplished and affected through the innermost of Torah. That's like the Chassidus, the Chassidic deeper learning of Torah and the secrets of the Torah. That's the peace within Torah. The less time like kushav. There's no questions and arguments there in Chassidus. In other words, it's telling us we're talking about God and how it is, and that is what elevates everything else that we learn in Torah, the revealed parts of Torah. Like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says in the Zohar, and the Alter Rebbe quotes it in the Holy Epistle, in the Holy Book of Tanya, which he authored. So the Torah brings about peace in the world, and therefore it gives us the strength to be successful in our battle against the animal soul, which comes also, one of the main tools of this is prayer. Now the verse itself doesn't only speak about the offering, but it says that the offering is offered up with cattle and with sheep. So there the Mitteler Rebbe explains in the Maimer further that Pirush Boker hu bechinas pnei sheira asher hu me'asmeil chulu. So now he's talking about the energy, the strength that we get from God and what it corresponds to, and the way God created the world in the chain of how he imbues the world with godliness. And there's a multitude of levels, really an infinite amount of levels. And the source, or the catalyst, really a reference to the prophecy of Ezekiel, the first chapter, where he speaks about the great chariot and the throne of God. And he says there that the face of the ox is on the left. So that's the idea of the animal. We know left connotates severity, strength. And so why do we need here the strength? Like it says in the Gemara and Brachas, and it's interesting because the Rebbe doesn't say here the whole Maimer Azal, which a lot of times the Rebbe doesn't say the whole saying of the sages. It says a person should always use, and this is a strong term here. The Tanya brings this. This is the term of broiges. You ever hear the Yiddish word broiges? Rugza means anger. It means you have to make your godly soul angry over the animal soul. So the Rebbe just brings the nuance here. But v'chinas roiges v'dinin in a way of wrath and tough love, let's say. Dinin means the way when the law is passed down, the ruling, but it also means stringent ruling. Al hamenagid, over the one that's being oppositional. That's the animal soul. Those are also the wills to do the wrong things that we mentioned earlier. And when you use this, in other words, you use the severity in the right place for the right thing, that elevates and draws nearer the severity of the animal soul, which is also pushing hard. So we give it the pushback with the rugza. Now, not only is there the from the cattle, in addition to that, there's another way that you have to offer up the animal soul. That's what it says from the sheep. The Piddish Menachem, what is the sheep? The Yakreev, we're learning now this week and last week and next week, But Jacob, Yakreev, Jacob was a shepherd of sheep. That's because the attribute of Jacob is the attribute of mercy, the third attribute, which is tiferes, which is the idea of compassion, mercy. Abraham and Isaac is kindness and severity. Jacob is compassion, which is a mixture of both. And as it's explained at length in the Holy Book of Tanya, the attribute of Jacob is mercy. So what does that mean in our service to God? We have to awaken and evoke in our thought process before we start doing what kind of pity it is, and a great pity about this godly spark that is been exiled, and it's been lowered into this body that wants to do all these things. So we have to ask God for compassion about this godly spark. And this godly spark, which gives him life, it went down from its source, and it had to be enclosed in. And this is the Hasidic term based on the Kabbalistic term, which means in the snake skin, meaning to say it's very sneaky, etc. And especially if he remembers, etc. And whatever doesn't go on here, but it means remember how there were certain times when, due to that animal soul, a person unfortunately did things that they regret, that are regretful, things that are wrong, and things that shouldn't have been done. So we have to evoke mercy and look what happened. You drag down the godly soul into all of that, and therefore our primary task is to elevate the whole animal soul, not to get the godly soul stuck in it, and therefore we have to win the battle. So this is the idea of the mercy that we say, "Oy, what a rachmanis it is on this holy soul that we have." And now let's help it out. So when somebody really contemplates and truthfully about really what they're up to, and what's the real situation, and what's the real truth, not just about their physical body and like where they're up to, but the animal soul, how it's working so hard to control them. The godly soul works but it gets caught up with the other one, and the point is we have to allow it to take charge. Because the godly soul works through the animal soul, because the animal soul animates us. It's what makes us what we are as human beings. And really, in the deeper picture, this is important to be aware of this, and also the way it is in halachically, in the rulings of the way our day life is. And there in chapter 45 in Tanya, the Tanya speaks about, when he's speaking about Jacob. So the Rebbe continues, and it's about Parshas Vayetze, because we just came from Parshas Vayetze, so we just read this past Shabbos. Vayishak Yakreev l'Rachel, Vayisas Kelev Vayev. And Jacob kissed Rachel, and he raised his voice and cried. What is this idea? This is the idea, Shahu Idin His Eidis Rachmim Rabim Milmaila. That is the idea of awakening and evoking great mercy, the supernal mercy from above. Through this contemplative idea, through thinking about this deeply. So then we're able to draw down this aspect of mercy on the godly soul and on the animal soul, and make them work like they're supposed to together, and that the godly soul should influence the animal soul. That brings about that it's able to bring up the offering. Now the Rebbe says that the Mitteler Rebbe continues in the Maimer. There's another offering, and that's from the fowl, the bird. Like the subsequent verses there in the beginning of Leviticus say. The root and the source of the birds and the fowl is from the face of the. Before we spoke about the face of the ox on the chariot. Now this is from the face of the eagle, as is known, as is explained in Chassidus and Kabbalah, etc. That's also the idea of mercy. The eagle, although it's known as a tough animal, it's also a very compassionate bird. One of the things that it does is it protects its young by being willing to take it carries its young on its back, and so that it will take the arrow itself and not save its young. So that's known as a very compassionate aspect of the eagle. And Rashi talks about that. So now here you have the idea of Jacob, which is sheep, and that's the idea of mercy, and the idea that the Nesher, the eagle itself, is merciful. So the Mitteler Rebbe gets into that in the Maimer and explains, yes, there are two types of mercy. So the idea of the mercy that's connected with the sheep, meaning that ultimately, even though we'll get to this idea of mercy, but you have to then, like what we spoke about, that you have to really think about the tough position. You have to contemplate and say what kind of pity it is that this is the situation, and then when you think truthfully at what the situation really is, then you can work harder on it, etc. So it takes some more work. You have to have this contemplation. So you have to really think about the whole true situation, and that which then therefore you have the mercy on yourself, on your soul, on your animal soul, and all the details of life, etc. Then if you do this the right way, this will bring you to a firm resolution to evoke then the compassion within yourself to be able to then be victorious in this battle, etc. Omno in your halachim shebchinas eif hu sheim tzarich l'zeizbarinus v'yisayiris klal. But the bird flies, right? So that the idea of this mercy is that you don't need to sit and think about it and awaken and evoke it at all. El marachim mi'atzmei mitzad b'chinas etzem shebei. He understands immediately and is able to take out to evoke this compassion immediately by really cutting straight to the chase, and because essentially he understands that things have to be better. V'yashleimar, take this to the bank, like Menachem says. V'yashleimar, b'zeh sheb'chinezu berachamim, he b'chines rachamim d'nesher v'eif dafkem. Now this is the Rebbe adding. The Mitteler doesn't say this. That this idea that this type of mercy is then connected to the fowl, to the bird, that this type of mercy that you really have innately, and you could really tap into this energy and realize that hey, it's a scene that has to be changed. So it's particularly specifically with the bird, who mishum sha'ef inyanehu kameshakosov eif falor. It's like it says in Genesis. The whole idea of the bird is that he flies above. He's above all this. You don't have to get into the nitty-gritty. Stay higher than it. The whole idea of the bird is flying. The whole word oif comes from the word yoifef, which means to fly. Ala oretz. Shehu l'mayla ben oretz. It's higher than the earth, than the lowest. Maybe mashakosov havai liboizri. Now, on the general idea of a person bringing the offering, so the Mitteler Rebbe brings into the Maimer that which it says that God will be to my assistance, to my help. In chapter 118 in Psalms, the Mashkosov Ha'izri Loshen Rabim Hashem li ba'izroi v'ani Rebbe said, yeah, ba'izroi. That this is in the it's not singular, but it's plural, in the plural. So that which it says oizrai lashon rab koyal kol sinin Torah mitzvah. It means that the various aspects which is helpful, the Torah and its mitzvahs, and especially the prayer. That ever circling back, that ever circling back to what he said earlier, that this comes through prayer. Prayer helps in all of this, and that's when God helps us also through that. Prati is so not just specifically in prayer, which was instituted in lieu of the offerings, but in detail, specifically, if you really want to get into the minute detail, koyal karbonos v'pashtus. So prati is koyal karbonos v'pashtus. This would be the actual offerings where God really helps. The rosa, the korban oila rosa itself, like we said earlier, that the secret and the mystery of the karbonos that really goes to the essence of God, to the infiniteness. The inyan karbonos v'chlal peil gam adam hamakrim kanal, like we mentioned earlier, that the offering also brings humility and understanding and righteousness and elevation to the person who offers the offering. All the aspects that are connected to it, including the charm of the soul, which is even higher than the body, and then the part of the soul which is in the body. This is also within the soul itself. It's like the animal soul, the godly soul. The godly soul is the charm which is higher than the soul, and the animal soul of the godly soul is the part of the godly soul which is in the body. That God helps the noisef al avodas ha'odam. That in addition to the way a person serves Mamata here on earth, God gives from His a special strength from above, from the level of God's name. And that was just like when there was an offering actually on the altar. Fire came out from heaven. Also, similarly, God gives us the strength now when we pray through prayer. And then when we pray, like it says, like we say, we come to the idea that is so much salvation. Like the Mitteler says in the verse, and then he says Vidal Lemavin. And if you study it properly, you'll understand it well, and you'll get it. So may be for us soon, speedily, in our days, actually so. May the holy temple be built speedily in our days. And like we say in the Mosif Amida on the festivals, and there we will bring before you the obligatory offerings like the commandments that you willed, the way you wanted it, and that will happen with the true full redemption through our righteous Mashiach. So may we be inspired with the Geula, and may this also bring about this redemption, bring us to our personal redemption and to the general redemption. And God willing, we'll learn there was several Mamorim in that period 40 years ago. So hopefully at the end of the week we'll have another Maimer. And like we said, B'li Neder will make up the other Mamorim. Everyone should have a very good week, materially as well as spiritually.